Special emphasis is now being placed on Mrs. Guthrie's bedroom and her garage. But why? I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. I want to thank you for being with us.
There is a word sitting inside a ransom note that the FBI read on day one. That word is Mexico. And for 68 days, nobody told you. No press conference, no public alert, not a single official statement. Just silence. From the agency holding the one detail that might explain where Nancy Guthrie actually is. Nancy disappeared from Tucson, Arizona, 70 miles from the border, 1 hour by car. That is how close she was to a line that changes everything, a line where American jurisdiction stops and the search goes dark. And from the very first note the kidnapper sent, that line was already part of the story. We are going to give you two things in this video. First, exactly what a former FBI agent just revealed about that note, the specific language, the geographic detail, and why the FBI's own analyst says this wasn't noise. The second, why the one agency built to cross that border may never have been called in at all. Stay with us, because both of those answers matter for Nancy. Here is what we know right now. A former FBI agent went on record with Newsweek this week. He examined the language inside the original ransom note. He looked at how the Mexico reference was embedded. He studied the specificity of the geographic detail. And his conclusion was clear. This wasn't written by a troll. This was written by someone with real knowledge of the border corridor. The FBI has had that note since day one. They read those words. They ran the analysis. If this case matters to you, subscribe right now. Because we are not done. What was actually in that note? That is where we start. But before we get into what the FBI knew, you need to understand exactly what was inside that note. Because the language didn't just mention Mexico. It pointed to a specific place, and that specificity is what changes everything. The note. The original ransom note arrived early, before the media frenzy, before the Bitcoin demands, before the TMZ letters, before all of it. It came first. And it named a place, Sonora, a Mexican state that sits directly south of Tucson. The note referenced it by name. Not vaguely, not symbolically. Specifically, the kind of specificity that tells investigators something important. You don't name Sonora by accident. You name it because you've been there, because you know the roots. Because you understand the border corridor the way someone who has moved through it understands it. Oh, that is the detail a former FBI agent just confirmed publicly in Newsweek. He didn't say Mexico was a red herring. He didn't say it was a lucky guess. The level of geographic detail, the specificity of the reference, the way it was embedded in the note, all of it points to someone with real knowledge of the border corridor. This is Promise 1, delivered. The former FBI agent's assessment is not fringe. It is not speculation. It is a credentialed analyst reading language the way he was trained to read it. Now, here is the line that the FBI quietly drew, and it matters more than almost anything else in this case. On one side of that line, the original notes, the ones that arrived before the noise, the ones that threatened Nancy's life, those, according to Ashley Banfield reporting for News Nation, the FBI now believes are real. Oh, on the other side, the Bitcoin demands, the contradictory letters sent to TMZ, the anonymous tips that kept shifting the story. That is noise. Opportunists trying to profit from a family's worst nightmare. The FBI separated the real from the fake. They drew the line. And the real note pointed south. If the original notes are real, and the FBI says they are, then the Mexico reference is not a theory. It is a clue, written in the kidnapper's own words, pointing 70 miles from where Nancy stood. Which means the next question isn't what was in the note. The next question is why 68 days passed before anyone outside the FBI heard a single word about it. So the note is real. The Mexico reference is real. The FBI has known this since day one. Which means the next question isn't what was in the note. It's why 68 days passed before anyone outside the FBI heard a single word about it. The two possibilities. We promised you the two possibilities behind the FBI's silence. Here they are, and neither one is comfortable. Possibility. One is strategy. The FBI read that note on day one. They identified the Mexico detail. They recognized the Sonora reference as credible, and they made a deliberate decision. Keep it out of the public conversation entirely. Why? Because if the kidnappers learn investigators are looking south, they move. They change routes. They destroy evidence. They relocate Nancy. If she is still alive, somewhere harder to reach. In kidnapping cases, silence from law enforcement isn't always incompetence. Sometimes silence is the only weapon they have. The less the kidnappers know about what the FBI knows, the more likely they make a mistake. If that's what happened, the FBI has been running a shadow investigation for over 2 months. One the public, the media, and possibly even the sheriff's office cannot see. Possibility 2 is harder to accept. What if the flood of fake notes buried the one that mattered? What if the Bitcoin demands and the TMZ letters and the anonymous contradictory messages created so much noise that the real signal, the Sonora reference, got lost in a file somewhere? What if 68 days passed not because of strategy, but because nobody acted on the most important clue in this case? Here is what both possibilities have in common. They each lead to the same 5-point reality of what crossing that border actually means for this investigation. 1. American search warrants stop working at the border. 2. Cell tower data from Arizona goes completely dark. 3. Surveillance footage from U.S. gas stations becomes useless. 4. The family's reward money carries no legal weight in Sonora. 5. Every domestic search effort since day one may have been pointing the wrong direction. Promise, 2 delivered. That is the full weight of what the Mexico detail means, not just a geographic reference, a wall between Nancy and every resource searching for her. Was the FBI's silence a strategy or a failure? I want to know what you think. Drop it in the comments, because both answers matter for Nancy. But the silence isn't the only gap in this investigation. Because while the FBI kept the Mexico detail off the table, the one agency that could actually reach across that border may never have been called in at all. The missing agency. There is one agency in the United States government built for exactly this. Not the FBI, not local detectives, not the sheriff's office, the DEA. The Drug Enforcement Administration has something no other agency carries into this kind of case. Cross-border intelligence networks, informants operating on both sides of the line, surveillance infrastructure that reaches into Mexican territory, and relationships with Sonora authorities that take years, sometimes decades, to build. If Nancy crossed that border, the DEA is the only agency with the reach to find her. Here is the most unsettling detail in this entire investigation. As of today, There is no public confirmation that the DEA is involved in this case at all. Subscribe to the AutoVex crime right now. Because when that confirmation comes, if it comes, we will break it down the moment it surfaces. The agency built for cross-border operations may not be at the table. That is not a technicality. That is a gap in the investigation that has a direct impact on whether Nancy is found. And while that gap sits open, 3 separate pressure points are now converging on this case at once. 1. The FBI quietly building a behavioral case from the language in those notes. 2. A former FBI agent publicly pointing south on record in Newsweek. 3. Pima County officials formally demanding answers from Sheriff Chris Nanos, not requesting, demanding. The institutional body controlling his budget is now publicly questioning how this investigation has been run for 68 days. 3 pressure points, 1 missing woman, and the DEA nowhere in the public conversation. Why is there no public confirmation the DEA is involved? Drop your theory below. 3 pressure points, 1 missing woman, and a word written in a ransom note on day 1 that the FBI kept to themselves for 68 days. Here is where this case actually stands right now. Where it stands. Nancy Guthrie was someone's neighbor, someone's family, someone whose front door was visited 3 times in January before anyone made a move. 3 reconnaissance visits, weeks of patience, a plan built before the kidnapper ever touched her door. That level of preparation doesn't come from desperation. It comes from structure, from a network, from resources, and from a route out of this country that was already mapped before day 1. The FBI has had 68 days to sit with one question. Was the word Mexico in that note a threat, a deliberate message to her family that she was already out of reach? Was it a taunt directed at investigators meant to make them feel powerless? Or was it an accident, a detail the kidnapper revealed without meaning to? Each answer leads somewhere different, and the FBI still hasn't told us which one they believe. At the vanished case, every case matters. Every clue counts, and on this case, the clues are finally surfacing. Subscribe to the AutoVex crime right now. The next break in this investigation could come any day. You need to be here when it does. That word in the note? Mexico. Was it a threat, a taunt, or an accident? Tell me below. Because your read on this matters. If you missed our last video, the note that said she was dead and the contradictions the FBI found inside it, watch it now. That video is critical for understanding what is real and what is not in this investigation. Every case matters. Every clue counts.